Scavengers Reign is a sci-fi horror series about the crew of an intergalactic freighter ship called the Demeter. It malfunctions after being hit by a solar flare and forces the crew to crash land on a planet known as Vesta. Vesta is, however, not as it seems. Along with the usual dangers characters stranded in alien environments run into, that being dying, being killed, and death, there seems to be something strange about Vesta, its very core, something that binds its inhabitants and its ecology together. The narrative is shaped by this interconnectivity. It impacts its themes and ideas and will cause me to spoil the whole thing, so go watch it if you haven't. This video is not a recap. Discussions of plot points are not in chronological order, and I will be spoiling things quite liberally. You have been warned. The show was helmed by Charles Huetner and Joseph Bennett. Both of them worked on the original short the show is based on, which is free here on YouTube, so at least check that out. Joseph Bennett is probably most well known, at least now, for the show Common Side Effects, which is really good. It's like a bite-sized prestige television show. It looks consistently great, it's like a beautiful looking show, but in terms of narrative, character writing, dialogue, it pales in comparison to Scavengers Reign. Not to say it's poor in those areas, in fact the final episode of season 1 seems to be setting up something really exciting and I'm looking forward to it. It's just not nearly as good as Scavengers Reign in those areas. But I'd bet if you liked Common Side Effects, you'd like this. Scavengers Reign is also beautiful. It has a real appreciation for the fictional wildlife on display. Some of the influences for the show were said to be stuff like nature documentaries, or more live-action films like The Last of the Mohicans or The Revenant, movies with a focus on swaths of great untamed nature and how humans fit into that environment. Charles Huetner did a lot of the backgrounds, and they're really detailed and cool. The color scheme of the whole show, it's popping off, as the kids would say. I'm not an animator, so I don't really have the vernacular or technical know-how to say the show looks good. All I know is that the way stuff squashes and stretches is very animatedly. Actually, maybe I do know some of the terms. The show is jam-packed with a love of nature. It really is crazy just how many cool animals there are in this show. One of my favorites is this little guy. Look at him, he's like a little drinker bird, bro. I love him. All of the creatures and how the characters interact with them serve a greater point to the narrative. But that's getting ahead of myself. How about we actually start this video? But before we start, this isn't a sponsorship, don't click off. Can you please like and subscribe? I'm literally desperate, I'm dying here, please. And maybe check out my memberships while you're at it. Section 1. What is this show even about? I may not be an animator, but I am a guy who likes creatures, and first and foremost, this show is about nature and ecology and all kinds of cool stuff like that. So much of the show is dedicated to just gawking at great vistas and looking at weird little guys. You've got paper birds, paper dragons, you got horsies, birdies, sluggies, the stuff that looks like it could be from our world, mammals, bugs and shit, and then you've got whatever the fuck this thing is. There's also great shots of plants just sitting there. It can be both beautiful views of nature and horrible brutality, and both are very well conveyed. The gross is gross, the pretty is pretty, and often the two meet to form some really messed up and inventive visuals. Despite looking pretty, what you'll notice very quickly is that this planet is a fucking shithole. They need to carpet bomb this place now. Everything is out to get these motherfuckers. I think a lot of the ways the show expresses things about nature is best shown in the scene that hooked me in the first episode.
We have no other choice than to get the battery in pod 5. Okay, so if we leave now, we can get there by the early morning.
An escape pod is surrounded by corpses with fungus growing out of them, clearly a remnant of those unlucky enough to have landed there. It's a really sickening scene. The characters have to use these squid-like creatures as makeshift gas masks. Look at this gross low angle. This inventive use of the biological elements of the alien life of Vesta is a huge part of the show's identity, which we'll talk about later. Whatever killed the survivors of this pod is in the air. It seems to be a fungus that plays on the emotions of its victims, mimicking human cries and faces to cause people to lower their guards.
That's impossible. No one could have survived down here.
One of the characters, a woman named Ursula, has her mask fall off. The other character, a man called Sam, decides they have to evacuate, using a pufferfish-like creature to fly out through the same hole the pod likely shot through. But as Ursula attempts to escape, she is consumed by the fungus. It grows out of her arms and then her ears and legs before erupting violently from her stomach as she still reaches for her escape. But it was all a hallucination, brought on by the fungus. When it shows the fungus after she has kicked it, it has these blue inhuman eyes. It was a facsimile that was created to make her hallucinate a human face. And it also gives the audience a little scare. You know, I'm not going to pretend like this wasn't just an excuse to draw some gnarly imagery without fully committing to killing Ursula off. But this is the first episode. A lot of it is establishing setting and world building, so they're allowed a little fake out as a treat. There's something mesmerizing about the total destruction and consumption of Ursula, not to be too morbid. She's not a real person and she doesn't even die, so calm down. It is this really interesting view of nature. It doesn't skimp out on anything to make it more sanitized, but it isn't miserable, at least not entirely. The creators in a Reddit AMA likened it to a quote from the Les Blanc film behind the scenes of Werner Herzog's film Fitzcarraldo, Burden of Dreams.
And nature here is vile and base. I wouldn't see anything erotical here. I would see fornication and asphyxiation and choking and fighting for survival and growing and just rotting away. The trees here are in misery and the birds are in misery. I don't think they sing, they just screech in pain.
I think it is probably one of the best ways I've seen a show express things about nature. By placing the audience in an alien environment, it's like they're learning the rules of the world all over again. And they get to see this rough, analogous world that's kind of as ugly as it is beautiful. In case you couldn't tell from the visuals being shown to your eyeballs, the show looks great. The lighting particularly is so expressive. Paired with the colors, it makes the world feel so livable. The show also makes great use of shallow focus to draw the audience's eye. It's like this shit was shot in a real camera, like a real nature documentary, with lens flares and shit. The show carries over so much of the short's identity, not just in its visuals. But its spectacular audio design. Paired with its soundtrack, everything feels so natural and lived in. A lot of effort was put into really capturing that feeling of being immersed in nature. As well as all the animals and nature, each episode is roughly structured around 3 plots, until later in the season when more characters are introduced, although it rarely shifts away from a 3-plot structure surrounding 3 main duos. These include the aforementioned Ursula and Sam.
Could we charge the last couple of months as overtime? I know, it's funny. But seriously.
Sam was the captain and pilot of the Demeter. Along with Ursula, they were able to get the Demeter down planetside. This was motivated by the fact that the ship is filled with colonists. They were in cryostasis before the ship's malfunction. Sam and Ursula need to get to the ship quickly or they'll die, as some have already begun doing.
Does that thing tell you if the crew is doing okay?
They'll be fine, as long as nothing from this planet gets in before we get there.
Did I eat the other passengers? Of course not. What do you think? I'm insane? You think there's something wrong with me? Oh shit! Oh shit!
This is where we meet my favorite character, Charlie. He gets into all sorts of wacky situations, but despite it all, he's got a good heart. He's just the most nuanced, 4-dimensional character, in fact, who I really want to talk about, but not this early in the video. Ursula is the ship's botanist. Despite what the fungus scene would suggest, she's pretty much the most mentally stable and likable character on the show, and she's one of my favorites.
I thought you were gonna tell me if this got worse.
Doesn't look that bad.
It looks terrible.
Although I won't be talking about her too much, at least compared to the other characters, because if I had one criticism of her character, she's a little static. But as the botanist, she's far more open to exploring the planet's eccentricities, such as in the episode The Storm, in which Sam seems to approach the titular storm as if it's a storm on Earth, despite the flying rocks that multiply when they come into contact with Well, anything that will bend to its force. Sam suggests searching a nearby hillside for a cave. It's not the worst idea, but definitely risky. But likely the only reason they survive is because Ursula notices a species of sea creatures that shield their young in its membrane under the ocean.
We can catch a ride with these things!
The second duo is Cayman and his little alien friend.
Fuck Cayman.
Cayman was an engineer on the ship. He's the reason the ship malfunctioned, inadvertently killing his ex-wife and countless other people. Possibly hundreds, given how big the ship is, although we're only shown one room of cryostasis colonists, and it's like 36 at a push. So maybe he only killed like 50 people, which is still pretty bad.
All of this is his fault. Man, I really hope he got what he deserved.
A lot of the first episodes are very Cayman heavy, and he is a fucking dickhead.
I outrank you, Sam, and everyone else on this bridge. I'm in charge, goddammit!
He is so self-assured, and yet totally incapable of functioning on his own.
I said I'm sorry.
I guess it's my mistake for having any expectations.
His life totally revolves around the loss of his wife, Fiona, both when she was alive and they were separated, and now that she's dead, despite seemingly hating every moment with her.
I'm right here. I agreed to go on this trip with you. What more do you want from me?
Average fucking heterosexual couple. Don't take this as me presenting myself as better than him and his emotions. In fact, his relatability definitely made me introspect a tiny bit upon watching. I don't have a wife, though. I'm available. No, I'm not. At least not to any of you. He begins the show trapped inside his escape pod. A subtle piece of imagery that foreshadows the heavy use of flashbacks within his plotline. He has had nothing to do but introspect. Unlike a lot of the other characters, he never really left the Demeter. This is until, like Cinderella, he is given an escape by a fairy godmother. This one looks a little different than usual.
2 in the morning, who is that? Yo, it's Gleep, what up, man?
Now, okay, let's get something straight. Scavengers Reign does not openly tell the audience any of the names of any of its creatures. This is assumedly pretty accurate to exploring an alien planet. I would not be calling this thing the Xenomorph. My ass would be calling it the double-mouthed face fucker, or something to that effect. None of these things have names, and the characters are a little too busy trying not to die to give this damn thing a name. This creature was known during production, and now by the fans, as the Hollow, because originally it was based on those see-through fish in the depths of the ocean. But then they realized it would be hard as shit to animate a see-through creature in 2D, which is fair. But you see, dear audience, I will not be calling it the Hollow. No. I will be calling it the Lizard Koala. Simply because that is what I've been calling it since I watched the show for the first time. And in case one of you motherfuckers says, oh, it looks more like a toad, look up what a gecko looks like. Give that motherfucker a fat head, these are the same guys. If you don't like that I won't be calling the lizard koala the Hollow, you can click off. Please don't. The lizard koala, sorry. The lizard koala is a psychic. It manipulates Cayman into becoming its source of food. And let me be clear, this is less mind control and more heavy suggestion. This is not a wild leap in behavior for Cayman. It more suggests and recontextualizes behaviors to him by using events in his life, primarily visions of his ex-wife. Whether it literally uses flashbacks or shows itself in the form of Fiona depends on, I guess, how it's feeling that day. The couple weren't legally divorced, more separated, but I'm still calling her his ex. I understand that they're sleeping together in the scene, but if you watch the scene closely, enhance this shit, beep beep, boop boop, boom. Did you see it? Check again. You'll notice that after they're separated, he's still wearing the ring, but she is not. Just let it go, bro. Oh my lord. The use of flashbacks within the show is really effective. There's a lot of shows that use flashbacks as a narrative technique to relate to the themes of an episode. The Good Place makes good use of that technique. This show does that too, but also uses the flashbacks in a similar way to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where the flashbacks are diegetic. But unlike Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, this show presents these flashbacks as almost parasitic. It's a different kind of sci-fi. The show is great at wordless exposition, and it's designed to be like that.
I was thinking a lot about the idea of, like, you know, kind of creating a visual narrative that doesn't have any dialogue. That I even wanted to pitch the show with no dialogue, which didn't happen obviously, but and I'm kind of glad about it now. I think I was very allergic to like any kind of exposition through dialogue.
There's a good sequence with the lizard koala in the first episode, in which wordless exposition is used to show the lizard koala's abilities. It uses a black goo to mind control creatures into getting it food, although the one that the narrative is focused on is not very high on the food chain. It is unable to compete with larger members of its species, so goes out in search of something to control. The sequence tells the audience, simply and effectively, all that they need to know about this creature, without having to be spoon-fed a whole explanation. I'll talk later in this video on how the show expands on this technique in order to make the audience a more informed spectator. While I could imagine a dialogueless version of Scavengers Reign, I don't know if it would be nearly as good, as the dialogue in Scavengers Reign is particularly effective.
Do you remember you took the canoe out and almost drowned? You were so helpless.
I'm not feeling very...
Here, the dialogue guides the imagery of the show. A lot of it is very purposeful and engaging. It doesn't overstay its welcome. Of course, I'm not criticizing the impulse in considering a version without dialogue. The original short didn't have any dialogue, and it's pretty good, but I really like the way dialogue is used throughout the show. The final duo is Ozzy and Levi. Levi is a malfunctioning robot. Its insides have become tangled with some kind of moss that is slowly giving the robot consciousness.
Why did you bury my wrench?
I'm not sure. I was just curious what would happen if I did.
You motherfucker! Point to all the pictures that have a traffic light in them! Right now!
This comes in many forms, but one of my favorite scenes in the show is when Ozzy realizes that Levi has been creating art and planting trees.
For what purpose?
I just thought it looked nice.
I know I'm anti-robot, to put it lightly, but if in a freak accident a robot gains true, natural consciousness, they're one of us. The only thing I have a problem with is the fake consciousnesses they give those damn clankers these days. Ozzy was in charge of cargo on the Demeter. Like Cayman, she's also kind of a dickhead.
And what's the first thing I'm gonna do when I get back?
You're gonna trade me in for a new bike.
A bike that won't bury my tools.
Some could interpret it as pragmatism, but seeing as her overall narrative is about challenging her ideas and opinions about relationships,
must get kinda lonely, cycling through new people every couple months.
It suits me though.
I think the audience is meant to see her as a bit of a dick at the start.
This food is actually unsafe for humans to eat.
And then why would you grow it?
Maybe I wasn't doing this for you.
Her and Levi being paired up together is therefore pretty compelling. A character who doesn't care for human connection being paired with a character who is slowly becoming more human.
Levi, keep watch while I climb up. Actually, do whatever you want. You're your own person, I guess.
Ozzy is forced to slowly consider Levi as a peer, a fellow mind, one worthy of respect. It's really interesting, and Ozzy slowly became my favorite character throughout the show, other than Charlie, of course.
Well, I hope you brought some comfortable shoes, Levi.
No, I don't have shoes.
Maybe we'll find you some along the way.
That is unlikely.
And then, when Levi is eventually killed, it feels even more tragic. Their plot is a slow burn, leading up to this very moment. Spend so much screen time establishing that a robot can feel things, like when they're touched, just to use that to show them getting ripped apart. It's a really mean thing to put in a show in a good way. You may have noticed that a lot of this section about what this show is about has been about the characters, because Scavengers Reign is a very character-driven narrative. Because of this, I think it's necessary to establish the characteristics of each of the major characters in order to understand how the narrative of the show is shaped by them. Section 2. The Creators. This show has this really interesting pairing of philosophies. One that focuses on interpersonal drama, or in some cases interbeing drama, and another that focuses on little guys, just little creatures.
Pesky bee.
Including one of the main characters, who as we all know is just a little guy. In this section, I want to focus on the creators. Before Scavengers Reign, Charles Huetner and Joseph Bennett worked together on a short called From God's Mouth to Your Ears.
There's another place too, Cafe Dolce Vita.
Which is a pretty cool short film about a paranoid man who gets gang stalked by secret agents, which is happening to you right now. Watch out for the red car parked in your neighbor's driveway.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.
The short film shows some of their strengths as animators and writers. Bennett did the talkie scenes with a lot of funny character-based movements and animation, which is one of the best parts of both Scavengers Reign and Common Side Effects. Just the way the characters move and talk. So much of the show's narrative is expressed through facial expressions and lighting. When our characters' faces obscured or completely blank, in the contrast of when actions are repeated, in how faces are framed against each other.
This is on you. Fucking idiot.
It uses character movement and facial expressions really effectively to express its ideas. It's also, and I don't know where else to fit this in, one of the best things about one of the only things I'd seen from Joseph Bennett before either of these shows.
Deborah, you got a problem. Deborah, please!
He made these really funny bumpers for FX.
You like what you do for a living? No, not really.
I remember seeing this puppet one on Twitter like a year or two ago.
Your wife, Cindy? Your son, Noah? Do you love them? What did you just say?
I'm not going to show all of them or even this whole thing. Obviously, you should check these out for yourself, but it is such a funny fucking skit. But primarily, it makes good use of character movement and expression. The puppet one wouldn't work without the understanding of the kind of movements used in the scenes it's making a joke with. And Charles Huetner, on the other hand, did this stuff.
And,
I love absurd nonsense. Nothing you animate or draw is actually alive, so I don't see much of a point in sticking with the basic laws of nature all the time. I don't want to be specific, and even though there might be a lot of detail, I like to keep it pretty vague as to what's really happening. Some of the aliens in Scavengers Reign act like the animals they resemble, but just as many drip around like little freaks. I think it is that lack of strict biological realities that makes the show so hard-hitting. One of the first scenes of the show sees Sam messing with this cow-looking alien's guts like a machine. The show knows what's important, so it drills into your head just how important this interconnectivity is. It's such a striking visual to hit the audience with in the first 2 minutes. I think, beyond this, it's the thematic elements of Charles Huetner's narratives that really struck me. Although, of course, animation is a very collaborative medium. I'm not trying to pretend the show's creation can be credited to two people. Not every visual decision is made by the creators.
Every member of the team was doing the same, constantly just trying to like work to the last second to make this the best it could possibly be, and you would see just episodes get exponentially better throughout the process.
Everybody's so passionate about it, looking at it from all these angles. It's just all happening within this like community.
Beehive, yeah.
Who really care about the project and are only thinking about making decisions based on how it'll benefit the overall show.
But I just want to spend a bit of time drawing parallels between the kind of things I enjoy in Scavengers Reign and the other works of its creators. The Jump from 2013 is a pretty stellar short film by Charles Huetner. It was part of an anthology of short films made with no funding. I would suggest you check it out. It's only 2 minutes and it's really good. I really like this short film. It follows two kids, a girl and a boy, who are jumping into these strange floating red guys and are able to see visions of people dying. There's a sense of thrill, even though 2 of the 3 deaths are relatively mundane. But when they jump for the final time, the girl sees the boy fall to his death. As the girl kneels over the corpse, the red thing floats away. It's punchy, it's expressive, it's the kind of thing I like about Scavengers Reign. It's not particularly invested in creating a coherent narrative with like a clear-cut point as much as it's about what you bring to it. When I watch The Jump, I see themes of consumption. It's supposed to be ironic. The characters and the audience feel so detached from the other deaths, and yet we're suddenly supposed to care about the death of this random kid. We, like those kids, are jumping. We enter the narrative and then leave at the moment of death. Maybe those kids should have had some perspective about the lives that were ruined to fuel those jumps, just like how the audience should consider that when they consume certain types of media. Scavengers Reign is also really good at striking visuals. When Charlie dies, I can't be bothered to keep up the joke where I pretend like he's an important character. He has 5 minutes of fucking screen time. Okay, you caught me. But when the lizard koala kills him, for a few seconds, his face and voice shifts to Fiona's. It is such a striking visual, as this is also the episode where Fiona's death is confirmed, and that Cayman was indirectly the cause of it.
Cayman, let me in. Cayman!
No!
He helplessly fumbles at his escape pod belt, accidentally leaving his ex-wife to die. Such a deliriously effective scene. He doesn't get a second chance in any sense, really. His selfishness got his wife killed. He's a fuck-up that probably deserved much worse than what he got.
It's my fault.
As far as I interpreted it, he fears consciousness, being alive and having to make choices, and live with those choices.
I can't take the pain. I'm done.
That's why he eventually gets absorbed into the lizard koala. Because it was either that or live with the utterly harrowing reality in which he lives. It's not strictly interested in some realistic portrayal of nature. The aliens serve far more of a narrative purpose as opposed to a world-building one. It's shorts like The Jump and the original Scavengers that capture a lot of what I really like about the show in microcosm. The short is similarly as expressive as The Jump. We'll talk a lot more about its themes later, but like The Jump, it's a lot about what you yourself bring to it. What you see in these narratives, like a lot of analysis, is heavily subjective. As opposed to the show, where the main characters use the planet's ecosystem to complete more relatively minor tasks, the plot of the short is based entirely on one big Rube Goldberg machine type sequence, which was a major influence on the show.
I was thinking a lot about kind of like Rube Goldberg machines and cause and effect, but that they're using these things in this world as like a utility. There's a functionality to it that they've figured out. And so a lot of going from the short to the series was trying to carry a lot of that stuff over.
Now, if you're a zoomer like me, you might not know who Rube Goldberg was. Well, he was an artist who drew overly complex machines and interconnected apparatus. Even when his ass was making comics about contemporary political issues, he was thinking of these fucking machines. I bet this shit hit hard if you were invested in foreign policy? Maybe? I only know this art because I'm pretty sure it inspired an old Tom and Jerry Flash game. Does anyone remember that shit? And you guys thought I wasn't based as hell. So when the term Rube Goldberg machine is used for this show, what is meant by that is that the alien life forms interact in really interesting ways with each other. Mechanical cow, electrical vines, a weird mushroom that releases spores to repel these even stranger shelled creatures with long tongues, the gas mask squid and propulsion pufferfish, all of these are in the first episode.
This place, it's like a puzzle. Nothing really makes sense in the way we know it.
It's a very purposeful fantasifying, a word that apparently doesn't exist according to fucking Google, but if it did, it would mean to make something more fantastical. It's a fantasifying of nature and systems like symbiosis, to make them more pronounced and interesting in a narrative structure. There's a scene with a bunch of horse-looking creatures that were inspired by the flight pattern of birds. Charles and I realized that it was almost impossible to come up with something totally original that doesn't exist in some way in nature, Bennett said. Birds will navigate and move according to wind patterns, so they follow who's to the left or to the right, or who's in front of them. There's a kind of choreography that plays into that, said Bennett. So, with the Stampede, we were thinking of doing that, but in the world of sound. these things are going off of sound reverberations, and that's how they're shifting from left to right. There's a real coherent design to the world, even if it's not entirely invested in a realistic portrayal of nature. This is all to say, with the variety of creatures and plants, that I would like to draw your attention to one standout element. Both the short and the show have bugs that act as gliders, which now means the show can get Fortnite skins. Koala lizard for the back bling, weird flying bug glider, Ozzy's glaive as the pickaxe. Put it in the fucking game, epic. Please! Yeah, that's the joke that we're gonna end this section on. Section 3. Structure. I think one of my favorite elements of television as a mode of expression is how the narratives are structured, not just in the bigger picture, but episode to episode. Although Scavengers Reign has more dialogue than both The Jump and the original short, it keeps that punchy pace by being intensely character-driven. Each character's place within the narrative is very purposeful, and the narratives are structured well around expressing this purpose. We've already talked about the characters and the three-plot structure, but what we haven't talked about is that the plots are thematically relevant to each other as opposed to narratively. That is to say, the narrative and the characters very rarely coalesce until the end of the season, but thematically a lot of the episodes coalesce very well. Take episode 3, The Wall. It's a major episode for characterization, getting the dynamics of the characters and their traits down, and it does this by showing each character's relationship with their environment. The lizard koala's parasitic flashbacks are used heavily in this episode's Cayman plotline. It uses Cayman's strained relationship in order to manipulate him into giving it food. This is seen in two ways in episode 3. First, when he is initially unable to secure food for the lizard koala. He is stopped by a guy called Caleb Wood did a lot of the concept art for the show, and these pieces of concept art either have labels or file names that we're gonna use as shorthand, so I guess this thing's a fucking monkey. A monkey-like alien prevents him from grabbing the fruit. This makes the lizard koala force him to recall a memory where he feels powerless.
Cayman, there's been a coolant leak for the mining equipment.
Ozzy reveals that enough coolant has leaked that the Demeter's mining equipment will become unusable before reaching their destination. As Cayman seems to be in charge of engineering in some capacity, he will be blamed for this. If a solution isn't found, he will be fired. And we've already seen how far he was willing to go. The flashback was forced on him in order to motivate him to get the fruit. But not only that, the flashback motivates him to kill the monkey. There's another great sequence of wordless exposition, as he then goes on a killing spree. The second memory, after this, is one in which Cayman is thriving. He's able to convince Fiona to get a job on the Demeter with him, by evoking their struggling relationship.
You keep saying we're in a rut. This is an opportunity to change all that.
This is cross-cut with him slaughtering another lizard koala.
I'm so happy for you. You've worked so hard for this.
More of that punchy imagery I was talking about. For Cayman, in both his memory and the present, it feels like his life is finally coming together. He'll fix his relationship with Fiona and get paid to do it, and the lizard koala has seemingly accepted him, because it doesn't care what it eats, only that it does. It wants him to kill more. So in episode 3, Cayman's relationship with his environment is one where he sees himself as the apex predator. He's the top of the food chain. It's wish fulfillment, escapism for a man who felt powerless on the Demeter, now able to play the role of provider for the lizard koala. But as the grotesque imagery of the lizard koala's manipulation represented by the black goo and its eventual cannibalism suggests, there's something demented and vile about how Cayman is acting. Ozzy and Levi's plot in the episode is not nearly as dense as Cayman, as they front-load a lot of the first few episodes with Cayman's stories because of his eventual voring by the lizard koala and becoming a fetus for the rest of the season. In this episode, Levi looks at some bugs. They communicate with each other using lights, and then later the duo get caught in that stampede I mentioned before. This is resolved when Levi guides Ozzy to steer her bike with the flow of the herd.
Follow the sway of the herd.
breathing and moving in step with them allows her and Levi to pass unharmed. It's a really cool sequence, the audio design is really satisfying, and it feels like a logical and thematically relevant conclusion. This too is about the duo's roles and relationship with the planet. Both are slowly learning to exist and connect with the planet. Obviously there's Levi, who is literally connecting with it, but Ozzy's plotline is just as much about this same sense of connection. All of that stuff about learning to connect with Levi and the world around her, that pretty much starts here. You get to see the two become closer and really bond. For Ursula and Sam's plot, it begins with them discussing a memory Sam has.
I remember one time on a job, we had to dock on a moon for an overnight refueling.
One where he and a friend encountered a skull on a barren moon. They don't know where it came from, but his friend is totally obsessed with it.
I shit you not, a year later to the day, he dies.
Sam recalls this and says he finds it strange to surrender so much control over one's life to a random event.
I just couldn't imagine giving up that kind of control over my own life.
The duo are then halted by a large wall that a group of strange bird-like creatures, the concept art calls them beakers, but then a different file name calls them treetop graboids. Treetop graboids make sense with how they act, and also that they prey on a species called pigoids, another concept art file name, but also Beaker is the name of a Muppet, so it's instantly my preferred name for this thing.
He will now show you how impossible it is to ignite the fireproof paper in this basket.
Beakers have a shell on their cervix, not the woman kind. Freak. The neck kind. It allows them to traverse through the wall. Remember, that's what this episode's about before I went on that rant. Inside the wall, Ursula gets separated from Sam and comes across this little guy. Holy fuck. He's so handsome. The little guy seemingly maintains the wall's health, doing a bunch of incomprehensible Rube Goldberg type shit that results in the wall beginning to move as if it's alive and breathing. This is one of the most standout sequences of the show. Just like when I talked about the jump, I don't think this says something entirely coherent. It does say things about life and nature and cycles through visuals though. It really grabs your attention. Like Ursula said, it is fascinating.
It's hard to explain. It was fascinating.
Talking to who, Ursula?
I think what really struck me was just how blunt it was. This small little guy who worked so hard just to shrivel up and die in order to maintain the order of this structure. It hits totally and completely and out of nowhere. It's also an interesting plot element to put in this episode, as it follows the sequence about the skull, where Ursula says this.
I think we just can't help the instinct to give meaning to things we don't understand.
A clear and rather explicit call to the audience to not think so deeply about why and how this creature does what it does, and more so to allow the imagery to speak to them. Of course, the show also has a bit of a background mystery that seems to imply the planet is more alive than a normal planet, not just in the sense that the creatures and ecosystems on it are alive, but that the planet itself thinks and dictates. I won't really be talking about that because it would lean too closely into like film theory type shit. But anyway, Ursula and Sam therefore constitute two juxtaposed relationships with the planet. Ursula, as the ship's botanist, is far more equipped to engage with the planet. Like Levi, she is shown things that are beyond what is right in front of her.
The world shares things with me that I couldn't possibly experience by myself. Things that are far beyond what's right in front of me.
This is in contrast to Sam, who very much needs a rational explanation for things. He's very steady in his ways and has very little patience with the planet. It's why, when the little guy sequence is over, he's annoyed at Ursula for making such a risky detour.
There's still a long way to go, and we can't be sitting around wasting time.
It wasn't a waste of time.
Sam's relationship with the environment is a little adversarial. It is either something to be used to his advantage or avoided lest it kills him.
I think there's something out there.
Of course there's something out there. There's something around every goddamn corner in this place.
And spoiler, in his case, he's a little right. Episode 3 is a great case study when it comes to the structure of the show's narrative, expressing something on its own and also giving the audience a view into the characterization and themes that will continue to influence the events of the series going forward. Section 4. Dramatic irony and how the story is conveyed. Dramatic irony is really important in any narrative. It's basically when you exposit the danger to an audience before it shows up. Like telling them there's a bomb under a table can turn a mundane conversation into a tense, suspenseful scene. I stole that bomb under the table example from an interview with Alfred Hitchcock, although he calls dramatic irony suspense, which it is a form of, but Hitchcock would separate how thrilling sequences are written into terror and suspense. Terror is induced by surprise, suspense by forewarning. The terror-suspense dilemma is normally resolved by compromise. There are several situations in a motion picture. The ordinary, and I think best, practice is to play most of the situations for suspense, and a few for terror. Suspense is more enjoyable than terror, actually, because it is a continuing experience, and attains a peak crescendo fashion, while terror, to be truly effective, must come all at once, like a bolt of lightning, and is more difficult, therefore, to savor. And I agree with this, generally, which I'm sure is the highest honor to Mr. Hitchcock. I wish to use this section to discuss how the show uses dramatic irony to convey the literal narrative, and also when it breaks away from dramatic irony to play with the audience's expectations. Most of the interactions with the aliens in this show are based on this principle of dramatic irony. The only places where it diverges from this in ways that aren't purposely subversive are parts like the gas mask squids that the audience already has context for. You know what a gas mask is, so you get the basic concept. A good example of the use of dramatic irony is the Centispore, one of the coolest names from the concept art, although it only has 6 legs, so whoever named it should be fired, and then executed. Ozzy gets paralyzed by a bunch of oversized spores from the Centispore. In this scene, she has to crawl to Levi and turn them on, after turning them off earlier. This scene is alright on its own. The Centispore is creepy looking, so an audience can probably guess, this thing's bad news. But the scene is made better by the inclusion of this guy. The Centispore kills this guy first, therefore giving Ozzy, and more importantly the audience, the opportunity to understand the stakes of this conflict. Of course, you can run off vibes, but going one step further with this kind of visual exposition can turn an effective scene into something really special, like the scene where Ursula and Sam hide inside that one creature during the storm. A species has evolved to prey on these creatures young when they are within its membrane. A lot of the creatures feel really tangible, despite some of the more fantastical ideas. Like, I think this and Dark Souls are the only pieces of media where I've seen creatures that evolved big fake eyes to intimidate and scare off predators. It's an exaggerated version of something creatures actually do in real life. But before one goes down and attacks Sam and Ursula, another one is shown killing other eggs. It's a small moment, barely noticeable, but these little moments like this can really help with making the audience a more informed spectator. Maybe you're not buying it. Maybe you don't see the point in making the audience a more informed spectator, to quote a moron. An idiot. Well, how about we look at an absolutely wild example of this technique? Wild in just how effectively and totally it changes the narrative of the episode. I'm of course talking about the sequence at the beginning of episode 6, where a creature is replaced by an imposter after being bitten by some kind of plant. The doppelganger, after replacing and burying the creature, follows the herd and kills them in an explosion. From this, a forest of those same plants is left in its wake. That's pretty coherent, right? An example of that wordless exposition I was talking about. It's also a great setup, because in episode 5, Sam was bitten by one of those plants. Fuck. Oh mein Gott! Sorry, I mean, the shit just got crazy, bro. The whole episode has been changed by this one 2-minute sequence. It's a really great example of how these kinds of moments in stories are important. Previous context has been given while also setting up what exactly will happen next.
Sam?
I feel like this scene would be far less impactful if we didn't know that this was a plant zombie. This thing's fucked up. It makes these really guttural noises. It is crazy, not even mentioning the fact that this plant seems to have enough awareness to copy Sam's clothes, although maybe that's just so he's not butt-ass naked. When it attacks the duo, there's dramatic irony on top of dramatic irony. The audience is shown that this plant works as a kind of gunpowder earlier in the episode, and Ursula then uses it as a weapon in the climax. Like, these episodes are so tightly written, there's hardly any fat. It's my favorite part of the show. That's why a lot of this video has been focused on how the show is written, because it's so good. You could imagine a similar episode where the audience isn't told about the doppelganger, where they are kept with Ursula and her mindset. Now, would that be bad? Not necessarily. It would be a different plot, obviously, with different elements and probably different pacing, but it wouldn't be nearly as coherent, at least narratively. The whole show is a big journey with big mysteries, but the episodes are episodic enough to make the whole show engaging. I don't really like serialization, as I've gone over in my Primal video. I'm a bigger fan of episodic stories, with maybe a bigger plotline that runs throughout the season, a Doctor Who type setup. Don't worry, I'm not going on that rant again. I got fucking called brain rotted by someone for not liking Stranger Things, so I won't say any of that stuff again. But when serialization, like in Scavengers Reign, is done in such a way where the episodes still feel coherent and like actual stories that are part of a greater whole, my ass can't complain. But of course, this is misleading. Although the show has plenty of moments of dramatic irony in its wordless exposition, the show has several moments of action in episodes where the audience isn't told anything, and it rocks. But Sir Never Give Up, you say. You just spent several minutes talking about how much you loved the dramatic irony, and now you're praising the show when it doesn't use dramatic irony? I'm going to fucking kill you. With a gun. How do I respond? I respond, calm the fuck down, bro. I'm in the middle of explaining. You're fucking insane, by the way. Right to the gun? Right to killing me with a gun? Jesus Christ, man. Anyway, when the show does invert the use of dramatic irony, it serves less as an interesting narrative development, although it sometimes is, and more as a challenge to the audience, which makes it really interesting. And I'm not just talking about something like Levi and the Moss Vine stuff, which is a plotline throughout the whole season that isn't really explained. But we're given just enough information to be able to piece together what is going on with Levi without it being an explicit plotline of any episode. I'm talking about the episode following the one with the Centaspore. While the Centaspore was a good example of effective dramatic irony, this is a good example of inverted dramatic irony. Ozzy is no longer covered in spores, but they have left oozing, bleeding, icky rashes. It makes me go, when I see them. They're so gross. She attempts to clean them off at least her tank top in a little pool. Of course, nothing on Vesta is that simple, and suddenly she's attacked by a group of ravenous fish that begin chowing down on her tank top, cleaning it of all the residual spores. And then she risks her hand, and the fish eat the residual spores right off her hand. Now, any audience member worth their salt will remember the Centaspore, which recontextualized what looked like fuzzy balls that appeared as a visual quirk throughout the previous episode into a terrifying trap. Or they'll remember the fungus that pretends to be human in order to kill people, or they'll remember the creatures that reflect Vesta's sun into their prey, the underwater scavengers, the saber-toothed hippo, the lizard koala, the wolves, the evil plant, the water head crab, the giant mosquito birds, any number of the crazy, awful stuff on this shithole planet. It is a planet of predators, so they'll know that these fish are bad fucking news. So when Ozzy goes and meets the bigger ones and it's edited like this, they will have a whole show's worth of baggage behind them and say, what the fuck? What the fuck are you doing, Ozzy? And then it turns out she's fine. Those things do what they advertised, and she goes on her merry way. This is great. I know I began this section describing that this is meant to challenge the audience, so this twist isn't that big of a surprise when I recount it. But I fell for this trick. It's about 2 hours of runtime into the show, and I thought I knew the show's tricks, but clearly I didn't. This was the moment that really made me appreciate the show. It seemed engaged in its narrative. This is a very purposeful moment. Some would say punchy and expressive. I don't know who that would be, but they sound pretty fucking smart. I like when narratives are engaged with themselves and able to break off from an established formula. In this case, every episode having a crazy creature that fucking kills you. It's a good way to grind the narrative and go back to that theme of nature. Remind the audience that this planet was not made to be some thrill ride with crazy stuff and predators and antagonists. It's an ecosystem. Sure, sometimes in our worlds there's lions that want to eat us. I know that that's not fucking ecologically correct, just let me fucking use metaphors. But there's also sometimes just birds that like to eat bugs off hippos' backs. Here, the inversion of that dramatic irony serves a very structural and slightly thematic purpose. It's meant to tell the audience that the show is aware of its developing formula, but that that's not the only trick the show has. A lot of this is about moderation. The audience should be informed, but not at all times. Sometimes it's nice to surprise your audience, and sometimes it's nice to be told what's going on. Bad writing would lean too heavily to one side, and particularly bad writing would lean too heavily to the side of not telling the audience anything. But just as easily, you could waste so much screen time establishing things that the audience doesn't really need to know. We know what a gas mask is, we know what a deer is, we know what a goat is, and although they look different to our versions of those things, they're similar enough, either functionally or appearance-wise, that the audience doesn't need them to be heavily established. Section 5. Isn't this show about something? I could have sworn that this show had a plot. You've been talking about all this lame writing, structure. I want the show's narrative spoon-fed to me, like a little baby bird. Apparently they use spoons now. Fucking hell, gotta do a second draft. Alright, okay, I'll give you what you want. When we're talking about the themes of a show, you can easily get mixed up in a simple explanation of what it's about. You know what I mean? What is Scavengers Reign about? Well, I think all you need to do is go to its original short to find that out. The Scavengers short, as has been shown, follows a duo of survivors doing a bunch of convoluted Rube Goldberg things within the ecosystem. But to what end? Well, at the end of the short, all is revealed. They were doing this to get a view of home. Not to get home, not to escape from the planet, just to get a taste of home, to see it for even a moment. It's a really interesting ending. It's low-key punchy and expressive. I need to shut the fuck up. It's not even fucking funny. You're just making fun of the fucking video you wrote yourself. They go out of their way to feel a connection with home. The short and the show are about connection and relationships. And how do I know this? Well, because one of the characters comes out and fucking says it.
We're probably all running away from something, but no matter what, I think we always need people in our lives that we can love and count on.
Apparently this character is a fucking video essayist. Fucking hell. Just stole my whole thunder, man. That's a huge thematic message of the show that she stole from me. I'm important to the ecosystem of discourse, I swear. Fuck, dude. Ozzy is probably my favorite character. She is British, but nobody's perfect. Ozzy, as I so graciously mentioned at the beginning of the video, was kind of a dick to begin with. She was really rude to Levi, which is illegal. Back in the Demeter, she was a loner, and she seemed to have chosen that for herself. But as time goes on, she makes a friend, a rock climber called Mia.
My friend Mia is a rock climber.
Well, you don't do this with your friends? They're really good fucking friends. She's the one who says the line about connection. She's mainly in a lot of flashbacks. A lot of the show's visuals are very purposeful, like when Ozzy and Mia meet. She is framed in a big white light while Ozzy is in a darker spot, expressing the two's dynamic. Aw, we're all awing, right? Don't be such a fucking asshole. This imagery is used because Ozzy's plotline is most obviously about learning to connect with others, and Mia incites that. When the ship is being evacuated, Ozzy even considers waking Mia up from cryostasis, but decides not to. It's about her conflict within herself. This ties into the discussion of dramatic irony. The flashback of Ozzy considering to wake up Mia is narratively right after the bigger fish fake out. Just as she is continuing to open up to the planet, so too was she beginning to open up to Mia. There's also a character I haven't discussed yet, called Chris.
I'm waking up the crew.
If they're not already dead, they can wait a few years for someone else to come rescue them. God, I'm telling you, it's not your responsibility.
She's a fucking asshole. She's a scavenger, roll credits, called to Vesta by Ozzy's distress signal. She wants to help her own people on an unseen planet by stripping the Demeter clean, and refuses to wake up the cryostasis colonists, effectively leaving them to die.
Remember what's important. The technology and materials we're gonna get from this ship are gonna change things.
There are several points in the show where it is made clear that she is supposed to be an analog of Ozzy's selfishness.
That fear you were carrying with you is gone now. You left it at the bottom of this mountain.
This dialogue is actually a metaphor, using both the death of Levi and... You know what? Why doesn't fucking Mia explain it, seeing as she's so smart, eh? Where Mia is the part of Ozzy that wants to form connections, Chris is the part that only cares about herself.
This is what we've been preparing for, right?
Yeah, it is. We deserve this.
Despite all of her bluster about the greater good and wanting to help her own people, when push comes to shove, she abandons a teenager on a hostile planet because he doesn't want to leave dozens of people to die.
Open the door, please!
I don't like Chris, but that's not really the point. Ozzy's plotline is about learning to ignore the selfish part of her brain that is Chris and start embracing the part that is Mia. I do fucking hate this kid, though.
I recognize your voice. This is Ozzy Noreen of the planetary freighter ship Demeter 227.
Barry, you motherfucker. After Ozzy was mourning Levi, do you think this is a fucking joke? Brother believes he's in Pikmin land, playing with a little musical plant. But when the fiery fucking blowhog shows up, you're gonna regret it, motherfucker. Sorry, I need to calm down. So I guess that's it. It's about human connection. It's a lot like a similar movie about being stranded on a deserted island. Say it with me now.
Alvin and the Chipmunks. Chipwrecked.
Thought about killing myself. Thought about killing ourselves.
I watched this whole fucking film for this video. So yeah, I'm gonna make you listen to me talk about it. But these two stories are about connection. It's their primary theme, as with a lot of deserted island stories, which is what Scavengers Reign effectively is. In order to justify characters wanting to get off where they're stranded, you need to have the characters have some connection to the world that they've been forcefully removed from. Therefore, plots about connections and relationships are kinda common sense. The characters wish to connect with their home, reach out and touch it, if even for a moment.
After saying goodnight.
Fuck you, Theodore, you little shit! Like Scavengers Reign, the characters are split up into groups. They go through trials and tribulations, but get through it all due to their connections.
Because right now, the rage I'm feeling for you and those chipmunks is the only thing keeping me going.
They wanted me to go to Hawaii for rehearsals, and when we pushed back and going, can I get 3 extra days? You know, I'm living in London now, and they're like, no, you have to be there for, just rehearsals?
Yeah, it's
for fucking chipmunks?
Dave and Ian, able to connect as friends and resolve their differences. And just like Scavengers Reign, there's an antagonistic character who fakes connection through her pretend connection with the chipmunks before tricking them into helping her find the island's secret treasure.
The rest of the treasure is mine. All mine!
That conniving son of a bitch. But this is similar to the lizard koala, who likens itself to Fiona in order to manipulate Cayman into feeding it. Now what is my point? Is it that Scavengers Reign and Alvin and the Chipmunks Chipwrecked are the same? No, but my point is, these two pieces of art, and yes, I do consider Scavengers Reign art, they're both about similar things. They're both about connection and relationships. The good and the bad, how these relationships affect the characters and how they approach the world. You know, art is about things, and while these two pieces of art express similar ideas, I want to be more focused on how Scavengers Reign goes about expressing this stuff, as opposed to gushing about how it's all about human connection and the nuances of it, and then moving on with my day. How about how the show expresses the nuance of human interaction pretty effectively? There are sympathetic things about Cayman, and there are repugnant things about Cayman, but there's very little good about him. I want to see the good in him and can understand why he acts the way he does, but so much of his story is just pathetic self-flagellation to no end. The cross-cutting between the present on the planet and his memories, I think, makes it rather clear he's just going in circles. Different place, same mistakes, all the while feeling so sorry for himself, but not doing anything to actually substantially change his behaviors.
I know that I valued your life over my own.
When Cayman redirected the ship, he redirected it into the path of a solar flare. Here is where you realize that Cayman isn't just a down-on-his-luck loser whose own stubbornness pushed his wife away, but that he's a momentous fuck-up. There's this really powerful moment where the ship's alarm and the music sync up as Cayman hangs his head. The weight of his fuck-up hitting him like a ton of bricks. It's so hard-hitting, like a ton of heavy objects. This is the event horizon of the audience's relationship with Cayman, just as it's the event horizon of all of the decisions that landed him right here. After Cayman was informed of the problem with the coolant, he came begging to Sam to change the flight plans for a chance to save the mining equipment.
I'm not taking us anywhere near that unstable sun under any circumstances.
Sam, who Cayman retrospectively likens to a monstrous saber-toothed hippo that stole a kill from him, denies him of what he believes he deserved. He worked hard for that kill, for that job, and now something stands in his way. In a sense, Sam comes to represent everything wrong with Cayman's life. He has had a rocky relationship with his wife for likely years. He's a stubborn and self-isolating person, but now all of that can be ignored in place of a greater enemy.
I'll lose my job. I'll lose everything. Sam, please. I need this.
But on the other hand, Sam's community-driven nature is another reason why the ship crashed. Ursula even comments on this.
Probably dug your heels in when he mentioned the idea instead of talking to him like a human and getting him to change his mind.
He was simply unable to comprehend Cayman as a person, seeing Cayman as part of the community, the crew, whose personal opinion is less than the community as a whole's opinion. This isn't necessarily a bad attitude. In fact, it's what makes him a good leader, but it doesn't make him a good person. The reason that Cayman redirected the ship is because he's selfish, but also because Sam rejected the idea and didn't even try to talk to the man, convince him that it's a bad idea. Cayman was in a corner, and Sam made himself an obstacle to circumvent by rejecting the idea outright.
Fuck you, Sam!
It's a really great example of how the show presents realistic relationship dynamics, that everything makes sense from a certain perspective, and who you side with, who you understand the reasoning of, who you dislike, all says things about how you approach real-life human relationships. This is where it differs from Chipwrecked, in expression. And not to imply that I want this amount of nuance and depth from a movie about talking chipmunks. In fact, let's drop the whole Chipwrecked comparison joke, and it was a joke, by the way, in case you think I was being serious. It's just that a simple recounting of the plot doesn't really capture what makes this show really special. It's in the minutiae. For example, I think the way the show likens symbiosis with human connection to be really interesting. The concept of the planet as one big Rube Goldberg machine is really apt when it comes to a story about relationships. Sometimes they can be mutual, but just as often it's exploitative. Parasites and similar exploitative entities are a huge part of the show. They recur like the fungus or the plant zombies, and particularly the lizard koala. These are social manipulators. But what the lizard koala doesn't realize is that it has pretty much infected one of the most dangerous species on that planet. It's called a human being. Maybe you've heard of them. Cayman isn't too dissimilar from the lizard koala, but as opposed to food, Cayman sought out connection. He never really treated Fiona like a real human, like a fellow mind. She was an accessory to his happiness, someone who he felt entitled to. Even if he was rude, even if he deprioritized her, he always expected her to be there. That's right. We're talking about toxic masculinity, am I right, ladies? Women don't watch my channel, I have like 5%. Humans don't know when to stop, and as a result, the lizard koala becomes a big fat guy. If I was a Redditor, I would call him a hecking chonker. Don't forget to like and subscribe for jokes like that. You see, the lizard koala thinks it's in charge of their relationship, but it really isn't. It is subtly being influenced by Cayman. It destroys Chris's ship, a definite Cayman move. This pointless rage that makes those around him sink to his level. There's this really great scene where Cayman is confronted by his memory of Fiona.
Your brain is poison. You've always known that.
The saddest and most interesting part of this scene is that Fiona, at least her memory, is kind of right.
You're too selfish to love anyone other than yourself.
This is not to say that in real life these thoughts have any kind of weight, but in this show, I thought, for maybe even a moment, Cayman was self-reflecting.
This is your memory. You can't escape it forever.
But when Chris and Barry blow a hole in the Demeter, they destroy Fiona's dead body, which the lizard koala had curled around. Now, just like with Sam, Cayman has someone else to blame. And he does, as the lizard koala goes on a rampage. The final 2 episodes is where you realize just how cool this fat motherfucker is. Lil Bro is just aura farming the last 2 episodes. It's kind of crazy. Your swag too cool, your aura too intense, they'll kill you, bro. It is here where I think one of the most compelling sequences I've seen in a television show happens. The lizard koala attempts to take over Levi, who has become embraced by the planet, serving as a meeting place for the creatures, including my favorite little guy.
Are you a Levi? I think I used to be.
They think they were born on Vesta.
I was born here.
And I guess they kind of were. And as the lizard koala begins to read their mind, it is made to comprehend Vesta in all of its interconnectivity. The sun, the sea, the plants, the geography, colliding and shifting, blooming and living. The lizard koala, a creature that spends most of its life alone, taking advantage of others, is made to comprehend pure symbiosis. It's this really gorgeous montage. Following the explosion that rocked Cayman from his vision of Fiona, he was shown falling toward the planet. He finally hits the planet when this montage starts. As I said at the beginning, Jesus Christ, this is a long video, Cayman never really left the Demeter. His mindset was always focused on the events that happened on the ship. This montage isn't for the lizard koala. It's a bit naive to pretend like being a literal parasite makes you evil. Parasites are just as much creatures as anything else. This montage is for Cayman. It's such a powerful scene just for how totally and coherently it expresses the themes of the show. Oftentimes humans forget, in all their free will and consciousness, that they are animals as well. But the interesting thing about humans is they get to choose. Choose whether they're a parasite or not. Choose how to engage with their surroundings and the people around them. Choose how people view them. And then, the lizard koala and Cayman are unfused, and it scampers off into the woods.
Go on, get out of here!
This is what makes the show special. Just how expressive this sequence is. How expressive the show is. Conclusion. So there it is. Kind of the longest video on my channel, unless you count psychosis. I don't know if I'll make a video this long ever again. I kind of lost my mind making this video. I've been really messed up in the head, worrying about making this damn video coherent and watchable. It's why I have an appreciation for the show, and art in general, because my shit takes way less effort, and it's driven me up the fucking wall trying to make this. I don't really believe in the idea of once-in-a-lifetime art, because how long has cinema existed? Like 130 years? A bit over? There are some motherfuckers who live that long. The next president of the United States is probably gonna be that old. So what? Has there only been like 3 once-in-a-lifetime movies? But there's 37 Marvel movies. How am I supposed to choose? But if I did believe in once-in-a-lifetime art, Scavengers Reign would definitely be that. It will undoubtedly be considered a seminal piece of animation in the future. It's written very well, the editing and sound design is amazing, and it's just Very good. Hey, that's the name of the video! As of the time of writing, Season 2 of Scavengers Reign is not in production, because it was cancelled. Personally, I would have liked for the show to have been easily available in the fucking UK before a year ago, but that's saying nothing. I think it's important to talk about shows like this, to advocate for them. Even if it doesn't go anywhere tangible, I think more eyes on art like this is important. As Charles Hutner said, shows that break the mold in American television don't have a built-in audience and need all the support they can get. The better this kind of thing performs in viewership, the more opportunities will exist to make shows like Scavengers Reign. But you might have noticed, this video isn't really about that, because the show isn't really incomplete. It ends rather satisfyingly, although it has a teaser for a second season, and it looked good, religious imagery and stuff like that. The creators even made another teaser and posted it to YouTube, when it was basically confirmed they wouldn't be getting a continuation for the foreseeable future, and it looks really good. But I did not mention the cancellation until the conclusion for a very specific reason, because to imply that the cancellation defines the show would be inaccurate. I am not advocating you watch this show because of some hope that it will get renewed. I have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I am not a moron. I know my place. I'm advocating for the show because it is sick, but don't get me wrong, I would really like another season. Actually, how about we make it 15 more seasons? I did not spoil all that this show holds. This show is so dense with stuff, interesting stuff, cool stuff, stuff you gotta see, and what hope do I have to recreate this narrative in an hour-long YouTube video? Although this video is really good and took me a long time to edit and write, and also you should like and subscribe, and join my memberships if you ever want to see me alive again. Sorry, that's fucked up to say. You don't need to do that. This video is probably a mess, but I know some of you motherfuckers didn't watch the show when I said to earlier. You need to go watch it. Sorry, I've barely slept in 3 days. Goodbye.